Hello everybody, this is Steve Yoder. This is a brief video on IRS Form 990. I'll be using the same PowerPoint slides for this video that you can read. I encourage you to do that in the module in the Business Research Toolkit on the Canvas platform. So let's get started. What are we hoping to accomplish in this video? First, why we have a Form 990, what are its key components, and how is Form 990 different from Form 990-PF, which stands for Private Foundation. And then finally, we'll be taking a quick look on how you might go about researching a nonprofit to evaluate its effectiveness. First, why do we have IRS Form 990? Well, we've had a tax return, even though no taxes due for tax-exempt organizations, since they've been around for nearly 100 years, but the form itself has taken on a great deal more importance over the last 20 years or so, particularly how it is governed. As you may know from your studies or your work experience, the topic of corporate governance has received a great deal of attention for public companies. These two members of Congress, Senator Sarbanes and Congressman Oxley, were the primary sponsors of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act that put a great deal of new requirements on publicly traded companies as far as how they governed themselves and how they disclosed how they governed themselves. Tax-exempt organizations have been the special project of the oldest member of the United States Senator Grassley from Iowa, and he can be relied on to find some new rule that he wants to impose on tax-exempt organizations, because he's just very suspicious that they're being used by rich people and rich corporations to avoid income taxes. So what are the key things that you will find in a Form 990? First, you'll find out exactly what the form of tax status is for an organization, the most common being 501c3. This is important because the type of tax status will determine whether you get a tax deduction if you are making a contribution. You'll find the financials for the tax-exempt organization, both a income statement and a balance sheet. You might want to know if the organization is losing money or not. For example, what we experienced at Birmingham Southern College with a faculty member looking at its Form 990 over 14 years ago and discovering that it was losing a great deal of money. You can also find how they spend their funds. You might be interested in getting funds or working with a particular tax-exempt organization. Its description of its programs would be very relevant to you. How it goes about fundraising. Maybe you're in the fundraising business yourself and want to work with them. How does it compensate its leadership, particularly the CEO? You might be looking for a job and you would want to know, well, how many employees does it have altogether? Or you might be interested in who the members of its governing body are, its board of trustees or its board of directors. Do you know anyone on that board? And finally, consistent with the corporate governance disclosure role of a Form 990, a great deal of disclosure goes into conflicts of interest. For example, do board members get business from the organization? The Form 990 does not prohibit that, but it requires that it be disclosed. So what types of tax-exempt organizations are required to file Form 990? Public charities and private foundations would be in this category. Not required to file the form would be all of these. Churches, public universities, public charities that are very small, and and political parties. You might not ever be able to find out public information or information unless you're an insider on these, but in some cases, such as public universities, there are other places to look. So here are some examples. Yes or no, do they file a Form 990? Yes, American Red Cross 501c3 does file 990s. Birmingham Southern College filed Form 990s. Won't anymore since it's out of business, sorry to say. And then private foundations would file Form 990 PF, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. UAB does not file a Form 990. There are other ways to research UAB, but don't look for a return, tax return for them in the IRS's website. Church of the Highlands, as I said before, churches do not have to file Form 990s, nor do political parties. Here are some reasons why you might be looking for information from a particular nonprofit or tax-exempt organization. We covered this already. Are you looking for services? Do you want to donate? Are you looking for funding? Looking for a job? Are you looking for compensation data? So here are some places to look. We will be focusing mainly on Cause IQ and the IRS's own website search engine. This is the first page of the IRS search engine. You would fill in the organization name that you're looking for, and you can see here that I've searched for Vulcan Park, which would bring about the 501c3 organization in Birmingham, Vulcan Park Foundation. Cause IQ, a very, very helpful third-party source that is free. You have to establish an account. You sign up for a free account, and most of its services that, at least at this point, you would need are free. If you're really going to be a super user, you might have to get a subscription. So if we were researching Vulcan Park Foundation on Cause IQ, we would fill in the search bar after we signed up with Vulcan Park Foundation. And we would see its employee ID number up there. Sometimes you need that if you're doing business with them. And we would also see their exact tax-exempt status, which is 501c3. Information about their financials is summarized on this page. You can see some multi-year graphs. Very importantly, they have Form 990s in PDF format going back at least 10 years, the most recent being at the top. Some of the other third-party sources might have even older Form 990s. Again, you want to know, is the organization tax exempt and exactly under which section? If you're making a donation, you want to know what section of the Internal Revenue Code. And here you can see that Vulcan Park's tax exempt status is 501c3. There's actually a great deal of financial information, both in summary form and in longer form, income statements and balance sheets. If you were looking for services, you would look at the Statement of Program Service Accomplishments for a description of what they do. If you were looking for how they raised funds, for example, if you are in the fundraising business, you'd want to know, do they pay fundraisers? And the IRS has set a threshold of $15,000 paid to fundraisers. Above that, you have to disclose it. Below that, you don't. If you're looking for a job, the Form 990 would tell you how many employees it had in its most recent filing. If you're looking for how much specific people get paid, that information would be here, but only for those who are making more than $100,000. Now let's take a look at Form 990 PF for private foundations. Congress, particularly these individuals, have been behind the corporate governance movement. Senator Grassley has applied that movement to tax-exempt organizations, and as I said before, he is very suspicious that the wealthy, both individuals and businesses, are using tax-exempt organizations, particularly private foundations, to shelter their income from taxation. The largest private foundations in the United States include the Walton Family Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates. So how is Form 990 PF different from Form 990? Well, first, the private foundations completing Form 90 have to tell you who contributed that money. Was it a particular individual from a wealthy family, or was it a particular business? And they have to tell you exactly how much they gave. Lucille Beeson, as I said before, in her will created the Lucille Beeson Charitable Trust. Large business in Birmingham, Vulcan Materials Company, a large employer, large publicly traded, one of only 2 Fortune 500 companies in the entire state of Alabama. Regions Bank is the other one, has a private foundation. So does Regions. The Form 990 PF will also tell you how to apply for a grant. Is there a particular form you have to use? And if they say use a form, you better use that form or they will reject your grant application. And they will tell you what the deadlines are. This is the first page, top of the first page for the Lucille Beeson Charitable Trust. You can see that it had assets of over $200 million. She was a very wealthy woman. Mrs. Beeson was the spouse of one of the founders of a large company that used to be headquartered in Birmingham, Liberty National Life Insurance Company. It has since moved to Dallas, Texas. Here is in part 14 of the Lucille Beeson Charitable Trust 990 PF, a list of the organizations that it has given money to. Now, they do not accept unsolicited grant requests. This would also be in part 14, and you can see that the total for their most recent fiscal year was over $10 million to Mrs. Beeson's favorite charities. Here is a blow up of the organizations that she wished to give that $10 million to every year. Sometimes you will want to do more than just look up information. You'll want to make a qualitative decision on a tax-exempt organization, and there are a number of ways to do that. You can do your own search of news articles, social media. You can look at the websites of the organizations. There are also some very helpful online resources that will rate a tax-exempt organization for you. The one that I use most often is Charity Navigator, but the Better Business Bureau also has one. Here's an example of a news article that came out not too long before I am recording this video about the salaries of highly paid nonprofit organizations in Alabama. But taking a look at Charity Navigator, they use a system of stars, and they give 4 stars. The greatest number of stars you can get is 4. And you can see here that United Way of Central Alabama got 4 stars. So they have a 100% rating. They are very proud of that. If you go to the United Way of Central Alabama website, you can see that they very prominently say United Way of Central Alabama earns 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. So what does it take to get 4 stars? Charity Navigator looks at 4 areas that you can see here. They call them accountability metrics. They relate to governance that we've mentioned before, how they tend to their finances, and do they have any conflicts of interest, and if they do, everybody does potentially, how do you manage them? And their rating again is 100%, 4 stars out of 4. That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be navigating, looking at how you can navigate the research sources for colleges and universities.